Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the channel. If you are here for stories of personal growth, emotional resilience, and real-life transformation, hit that subscribe button right now. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I love seeing how far these powerful stories travel. Please, stay with me until the very end, because this story isn't just about the crushing weight of betrayal. It's about finding the almost impossible lie. Strength to rebuild when your entire world collapses. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for his cufflinks. It was Tuesday morning, 6:15 a.m., and the zipper on David's carry-on was already halfway undone, waiting for me. He had asked me, half-jokingly, to finalize the mission while he finished his last urgent conference call before catching his early flight to the Chicago Tech Summit. The tailored shirts were folded neatly on the left side, smelling faintly of the sandalwood soap I bought him, a scent that, until that moment, represented safety and comfort. But tucked deep into the small, zipped mesh compartment, nestled innocently among the spare phone chargers and aspirin, was a tiny rectangular box I didn't recognize. And the chilling part? It was already open. My hands started shaking before my brain fully registered the clinical reality of what I was holding. It wasn't just proof of potential infidelity. It was a silent, premeditated cruelty that spoke volumes about his careful planning, his compartmentalized life, and the sheer audacity of asking me to handle the logistics of his deception. He hadn't just forgotten them. He had packed them, knowing I would be the one to seal the suitcase. The metallic foil wrapper felt cold and alien in my palm, a tiny bomb ready to explode. In that moment, staring at that stark evidence, I only knew one thing. This insignificant package was the match that would burn down the 12 years of perfect life we had built. I had found the physical evidence, the smoking gun, but I had yet to discover the true, horrifying price I would eventually pay for knowing this truth. Until 6:15 a.m. that Tuesday, I had been Maya, the successful architect who prioritized her family, the woman who believed in partnership and transparency, above all else. Our life wasn't defined by dramatic gestures or endless social media performance, but by quiet, solid routine, built brick by painstaking brick. Sunday morning brunches, shared spreadsheets for retirement goals, the meticulous planning of our daughter's college fund, and the silent, comfortable understanding that we always had each other's backs. David and I were the couple people envied, the calm, functional harbor in a chaotic world. We were a team. He handled the high-pressure deals. I managed the foundation of our home, careers, and the delicate balance of our family life. My greatest pride wasn't any building I designed. It was the impenetrable, unshakable trust we shared. I thought our marriage was a fortress. I was utterly, beautifully, tragically wrong, and that simple, damning discovery was about to shatter the glass of my reality. The simplest, most damning discovery didn't come in a flurry of texts or a lipstick stain. It arrived quietly, professionally, tucked inside the monthly American Express statement. If you've ever felt the ground shake beneath a foundation you believed impenetrable, you know this feeling. Welcome back to this journey of survival and painful clarity. Take a moment. Let me know where you are watching from. Where is this story finding you today? Because what happened next wasn't just a discovery. It was the slow, agonizing realization that the man I married was a ghost, and I was still living in a house built for two. I remember staring at the line item. The Azure Retreat, Aspen, 1-850 SARS. The date was 3 weeks prior, a Thursday. He had explicitly told me he was flying to Miami for the Global Finance Summit, booked entirely on corporate expense. Aspen was nowhere near Miami, and $1,850 was not the price of a takeout dinner. It was the price of a weekend stay in a luxury suite, likely including room service and a view that mocked the beige walls of my office. My fingers trembled, but my mind snapped into cold, forensic focus. The shock had passed. Pure surgical logic took over. I didn't confront him immediately. I needed data. That night, I watched him meticulously, observing how easily the mask settled. He discussed his grueling flight from Florida, complained about the humidity, and kissed me with the practiced familiarity of a husband returning home. The performance was flawless, which only made the silence inside my skull deafening. I waited 2 days, letting the tension coil in the space between us until the weekend, when the house felt too full of unspoken words. "Hey, honey," I started casually, leaning against the kitchen counter while he scrolled through his tablet. "I was just reconciling the joint account statements for tax season. I noticed this charge from Aspen, the Azure retreat. Was that a client meeting I forgot about? You mentioned Miami that week." He didn't look up immediately. The pause stretched, a thin, vibrating wire of falsehood. When he finally lifted his eyes, the casual dismissal in his gaze was a calculated weapon. "Oh, that," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "Yeah, last-minute pitch. Client. Flew me out for a quick turnaround presentation. Saved the company a fortune, actually, by not flying me all the way back to Denver first. It was just a night, hun. Business, you know." "Just a night," I echoed, trying to keep my voice even, tasting ash. The charge was for $1,850. A single night in Aspen, even at a high-end resort, wouldn't cost that much without significant additional charges. But I let it pass, the lie hanging like pollution in the air. "Right," I conceded, forcing a smile that felt like tearing silk. "Just checking. These high-dollar items need documentation." He kissed the top of my head, a gesture that now felt like a brand of ownership rather than affection, and retreated back into his digital world. But the seed of doubt had germinated into a thorny, desperate bush. The ease of his lie was terrifying. It wasn't a panicked fumble. It was a script he had rehearsed, perhaps many times before. The foundation hadn't just cracked. A section had dissolved entirely. The following week, the atmosphere in our home became a battlefield of passive aggression. We spoke in short, functional sentences, logistics, children, schedules, but never about us. He started taking calls outside, pacing the garden, his voice dropping to an urgent murmur. He claimed it was confidential work, but I recognized the difference between professional discretion and personal secrecy. The truth began leaking out in slow, painful drips. I found a second, smaller anomaly. A prepaid cell phone bill tucked into the side pocket of his rarely used gym bag. It wasn't his work phone, and it certainly wasn't his personal phone, which sat innocently on his nightstand. I stood there, holding the burner phone receipt, realizing the complexity of the betrayal. This wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. This was infrastructure. This was planning. He hadn't just broken our vows. He had built an entirely separate life, complete with its own communication channels, alibis, and financial trail. The fortress of our marriage was not just compromised. It was a meticulously constructed decoy. My heart didn't break. It petrified. The pain was too great for simple tears. I felt a cold surge of resolve, a terrifying calm. If he was running a secondary operation, I would become the intelligence agent tasked with dismantling it. I placed the receipt exactly where I found it, pretending the discovery had never happened. I knew then that the next move had to be definitive, irreversible. I wasn't looking for excuses anymore. I was hunting for the final, catastrophic proof. I needed the smoking gun to ensure that when I walked away, I didn't just leave a marriage. I incinerated his carefully constructed double life. Stay with me until the very end, because the confrontation, when it finally came, was less about emotional distress and more about strategic dismantling. If this story of finding strength in the face of absolute betrayal is connecting with you, please hit the like button, subscribe for more stories of human resilience, and join me as I move toward the point of no return. Welcome back, Resilience Warriors. If you're just joining this journey, know that you've stumbled into a story about finding strength when the foundation beneath your life turns to dust. Before we dive back into the strategy of dismantling a decade of lies, please take a moment. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories of personal breakthrough, and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from right now? I love seeing how far these messages of inner transformation travel. Keep your focus sharp, because what happened next proved that betrayal is rarely just emotional. It's a financial and logistical weapon. Stay with me until the final, definitive blow. The air in our house had ceased to be breathable. It had become a dense, heavy medium, like walking underwater. We maintained a terrifying, meticulous silence, a high-stakes performance where the slightest misstep, a misplaced sigh, a word spoken too loudly, could trigger the explosion I was carefully scheduling. He thought he was walking on eggshells. I knew I was holding a match to a fuse. My preparation was methodical, cold, and utterly detached. I was no longer his wife. I was a forensic accountant and a private investigator rolled into one exhausted body. The first crack in his carefully curated post-betrayal routine wasn't a confession or a drunken slip. It was administrative. It happened 3 weeks into the silent war. I was attempting to organize the utility bill payments, a mundane task that used to feel like the bedrock of our predictable normalcy, when I noticed an anomaly in our shared digital calendar. A small, almost imperceptible entry, hastily deleted but still visible in the server cache. 10 a.m., meet WLRK, urgent refinance. LRK was the name of the managing partner at The Real, a state law firm that handled the purchase of our first rental property, a small condo in the city we had purchased years ago and rented out. It was a joint asset, a source of passive income, yet this meeting was scheduled solely under his name, tucked away on a Monday morning, when he claimed to be tied up in back-to-back presentations at the office. The urgency implied a hasty, solo action. My stomach didn't drop. It turned to tempered steel. This wasn't about the other woman anymore. This was about asset protection. He wasn't just planning to leave. He was planning to loot. I didn't confront him. Confrontation was for amateurs who sought closure. I sought leverage. Instead, I spent the rest of the evening cross-referencing that deleted calendar entry with our joint bank statements. It took hours of staring at spreadsheets until the blue glow of the screen felt physically painful. What I found was a recent, substantial withdrawal, a fee paid out to LRK's firm, categorized vaguely as consultation. This suggested he wasn't just thinking about refinancing the property. He was actively maneuvering to separate or liquidate joint investments without my knowledge, trying to shield them from the eventual settlement. The unfairness of it hit me with a clarity that surpassed the initial pain of the infidelity. Adultery is a wound inflicted by passion or selfishness. But the calculated, cold-blooded attempt to strip away my financial stability, to ensure I was left not just heartbroken but disadvantaged, was an act of pure malice. It revealed his true character. His greed was greater than his guilt. The man I had married wasn't just a liar. He was a thief, attempting to steal years of my labor, disguised as a husband protecting his interests. That night, I realized I had been too slow. I had been focused on the emotional proof, the texts, the flights, the hotel receipts. I should have been focused on the deed transfers and the portfolio movements. This small, frantic meeting about the condo was his first official move on the chessboard, and I had only intercepted it by accident. If he was trying to hide the rental property, what else was he scrambling to obscure? The corporate accounts? The retirement funds? Initiated my counterstrike immediately, but silently. I contacted the one person he would never suspect, my cousin, who worked in corporate forensic accounting and owed me a monumental favor from college. I sent him the vague consultation receipt and the lawyer's name with a single chilling request. Pull everything related to this firm and our joint property. I need to know what he is planning before he signs anything binding. I knew the risk was immense. Involving family could escalate the conflict into a full-blown war. But I was past the point of diplomacy. I needed legal firepower, and I needed it yesterday. The tension during the next few days was excruciating. He moved through the house with a fake, buoyant cheerfulness, asking about my day, offering to pick up groceries, the desperate performance of a man trying to project normalcy while actively dismantling his own life behind closed doors. Every time he smiled, I saw the lawyer's fees flashing in my mind, the cost of his duplicity. I found myself watching him eat, talk, and sleep, not with resentment, but with the clinical fascination one reserves for a dangerous insect trapped under glass. He was unaware that the walls were closing in, that the man he had trusted with the details of his escape was now working for the prosecution. The emotional break had occurred, not when I discovered the affair, but when I discovered his financial malice. That small, deleted calendar entry was the keyhole through which I saw the true monster. A greedy, self-serving opportunist willing to sacrifice everything, including my future, for his comfort. The time for gathering evidence was over. The time for strategic intervention had begun. I was moving toward the point of no return, armed not with tears, but with spreadsheets and legal ammunition. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're looking for stories of personal breakthrough, inner strength, and turning pain into power, you are definitely in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any of these life-changing narratives. Tell me in the comments below, where in the world are you watching this story unfold? I love seeing how far this message of resilience travels. Stick with me until the very end, because trust me, the shift in perspective we're about to witness is everything. The strategic intervention began with a single keystroke. My first move wasn't confrontational. It was purely defensive, aimed at securing the one investment account where my signature was still needed for major withdrawals. I changed the security questions, updated the two-factor authentication to my private, unshared phone, and altered the password to something randomized and completely unguessable. It felt like laying a tripwire in the dark. I didn't have to wait long for the result. 48 hours later, a notification popped up on my phone, cold and clinical. Unsuccessful login attempt detected from an unrecognized IP address in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix was where his mistress lived. The attempt wasn't just impulsive, it was insistent. A series of rapid-fire entries. He wasn't just cheating with his body. He was already trying to drain the lifeboat we were supposed to share, and he was doing it from her temporary haven. The temperature in the house dropped to absolute zero. He came home that night, late as usual, walking through the front door like a ghost passing through a wall. He didn't mention the account access, didn't question why our joint funds suddenly required an authorization code he didn't possess, and he didn't ask why I was suddenly so quiet, so focused on my laptop screen. His silence wasn't a sign of ignorance. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of mutual acknowledgement. We both knew the war had started, but neither of us dared fire the first audible shot. We slept in the same bed, but there was an ocean of calculation between us. The sound of his key turning in the lock went from a welcome sound to the chilling tick of a countdown. Timer. Every forced smile during dinner was a performance of domestic normalcy that felt like swallowing broken glass. I watched him, measuring his performance, realizing that the man I married wasn't just a liar. He was an actor, capable of sustaining a charade of fidelity and financial partnership while simultaneously plotting my ruin. I needed to understand the scope of his premeditation. The deleted calendar entry was a symptom. The attempted login was confirmation, but I needed the diagnosis. I needed to know how deep the roots of this betrayal ran. My search led me, methodically, through the dusty, rarely accessed corners of our shared storage, places he would assume I never looked. I was organizing old, irrelevant tax documents, a task so mundane it provided the perfect cover. tucked deep into the lining of an old leather suitcase. A suitcase he always insisted on packing himself, claiming the lining was weak. I found it. A thick, sealed envelope, official-looking, tucked where the fabric met the frame. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped it, not from fear, but from the horrifying certainty that whatever was inside would be worse than anything I'd imagined. The paper inside wasn't a love letter or an admission of guilt. It was far colder, far more devastating. It was a draft of a legally binding document, a post-nuptial agreement, but one drafted years before our relationship had any recognizable cracks. The date on the signature line was 2 years after our wedding, a time when we were supposedly discussing starting a family. The document meticulously outlined his separate assets, specified the division of property based on a wildly skewed valuation that favored him, and, this was the blow that knocked the air from my lungs, it detailed the establishment of a complex shell corporation structure. This wasn't an impulsive betrayal. This was engineering. He wasn't just planning to leave me financially barren. He had been systematically constructing a fortress around his wealth, diverting future income streams into untraceable entities, all while looking me in the eye and promising forever. He hadn't just betrayed our vows. He had spent years laying the legal groundwork for my financial extinction. The discovery wasn't just evidence. It was the chilling, irrefutable proof that the marriage had died a long time ago, killed not by indifference, but by cynical, calculated malice. Hello, brave souls, and welcome back to the channel. If this story finds you, I hope you're ready, because the depths of betrayal I faced were darker than anything I could have imagined. Hit that subscribe button, let me know where in the world you're watching from, and please stick with me until the very end, because the transformation that came from this darkness is the core of this whole journey. The blueprints for my financial execution lay scattered across the marble countertop, but I tucked them away with the precision of a surgeon storing a contaminated scalpel. My rage was no longer hot. It was a perfect, crystalline freeze. I couldn't afford hysteria. Hysteria would give him the advantage, confirming the volatile stereotype he always quietly projected onto me. I had to become a ghost in my own house, a silent observer gathering intelligence. The first test was vital. I needed to confirm he was already acting on his planned severance without giving away my discovery. That evening, I broached the subject of refinancing the lake house, a property we genuinely loved and had always discussed upgrading. "The rates are fantastic right now, darling," I said, trying out the nauseating sweetness that felt like sandpaper on my tongue. His reaction was immediate and icy. He didn't even look up from his tablet. "That's complicated, Clara. The property is currently held under the Davies-Roth trust structure for tax efficiency. Moving it now would trigger unnecessary capital gains." He used the legal jargon I had just read in the documents, the jargon specifically, designed to keep my name off the future title. The refusal wasn't just practical. It was a confirmation that the firewall was already active. The man sitting across from me wasn't my husband. He was the chief financial officer of my impending destitution. The silence between us became a third person at the dinner table, heavy and suffocating. We spoke only in transactional logistics. Did you pay the gardener? Is there enough ice? But my surveillance deepened. I started tracing the movement of the shell companies he'd set up, cross-referencing their minimal operating expenses with sudden, high-value disbursements. Most of the money flowed into a complex web of offshore accounts, but one specific payment chain, designated operating overhead remote assets, caught my eye. It led not to a corporate office or a commodity investment, but to property records in a zip code 3, states away, a small, exclusive community tucked away in the Tennessee mountains. The sheer audacity of the second discovery choked the air from my lungs. Using a borrowed identity and specialized software, I accessed the full county deed for the Tennessee property. It was a sprawling, newly constructed home, fully paid for in cash by Ethelred Holdings LLC, one of the untraceable entities detailed in his malicious portfolio. The address was a dead end until I cross-referenced the property taxes. Included in the tax documentation was a seemingly innocuous utility bill for high-speed internet, registered under a different name, Leanne Davies. It wasn't just a mistress, it was a ghost wife, utilizing his own name, slightly adjusted. But the final, crushing blow arrived a few days later. Hidden within a discarded corporate travel expense report, I found crumpled at the bottom of his briefcase. The report detailed a 3-day trip to that Tennessee town, listed officially as a client development seminar. The receipts, however, told a different story. Along with the expense for the private flight and the local catering, there was a charge for a specialized pediatric dentist. Taped to the back of the receipt, as if an afterthought, was a small folded card for the Oak Ridge Academy, an elite preparatory school. My eyes fixed on the handwritten note scribbled carelessly in his familiar script. Admission deposit confirmed for August. Liam, grade 2. He hadn't just built a financial fortress against me. He had built an entirely separate life, a second family, conceived and financed using the very wealth he systematically drained from our marriage. Liam, a son. The chilling implication settled over me like frost. The entire legal scheme, the untraceable entities, the complex diversion of funds. It wasn't just insurance against divorce. It was a calculated strategy to ensure that his real family, the secret family he chose years ago, would inherit everything, leaving me with only the ashes of a life I thought was ours. I realized then that my husband hadn't merely cheated. He had successfully run a decade-long con, and I had been the unwitting, silent partner in my own spectacular downfall. The emotional wound was so deep it bypassed pain and settled into a terrifying clarity. I was no longer fighting a man seeking divorce. I was fighting an enemy who had declared war years ago. The rules of engagement had changed. He thought he had outmaneuvered me with shell corporations and legal double-speak. He failed to realize that the moment I found that first piece of paper, I stopped being his wife and became a strategist with nothing left to lose. I needed to move with surgical precision, to dismantle his legacy piece by piece before he even knew the game had truly begun. If this story resonates with the quiet strength you find when life knocks you down, please hit that like button. Sharing these painful truths is the first step toward transformation. Stick around, because the next video details the exact moment I turned the tables. The counter-strategy that proved emotional intelligence is always sharper than cynical malice. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, you've stepped into a moment in my life where the air stopped feeling breathable. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about the surgical precision required to save yourself when the person you trusted most turns out to be your predator. If stories about finding that cold, clear inner strength when everything collapses resonate with you, please hit subscribe. I want to build a community here where we share these painful, transforming truths. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Where are you fighting your own battles right now? Stick around, because the climax of this discovery is why I'm here today. The waiting felt like standing under a cracked dam. After I realized the extent of his malice, I couldn't afford histrionics. Every interaction became a performance. I moved through our shared home, not as a wife, but as an investigator in a crime scene. I had to appear calm, slightly defeated even, to lull him into the false security of his own calculated success. He mistook my silence for submission, my professional distance for acceptance of his terms. His arrogance, the easy way he carried himself while planning my destruction, was the toxic fuel that kept me operating. He was so proud of his cleverness, he never once considered that I was already halfway through dismantling his game board. My focus narrowed to the digital footprint. The heart might heal, but the ledger doesn't lie. I knew he was meticulous about his private files, keeping them off the main server we shared for our business. The key lay in his physical office, a space I rarely entered because he claimed it was where he needed uninterrupted focus. It wasn't focus he needed. It was secrecy. I waited until he was on a supposed emergency business trip, the perfect, predictable cover for his continued maneuvering. I went into his office under the guise of finding an old invoice. The air in there was stale, heavy with the scent of leather and dishonesty. I didn't find the invoice, but my fingers traced the back of his massive mahogany bookshelf, feeling for the slight give I knew existed. Behind a stack of decades-old law, journals, I found it, a small, encrypted external hard drive, the kind you use when you want total deniability. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the cold, intense focus of a surgeon about to make the final incision. I knew this drive held the truth, the full, ugly shape of his plan. The password was a date I hadn't thought about in years, the anniversary of the day he closed his first major deal, years before he met me. A testament to his true love, money, and self-congratulation. The drive clicked open, and the screen flooded with files marked with cryptic codes. I bypassed the irrelevant and zoomed in on the legal documents, specifically those related to the company restructuring he had insisted upon 6 months prior, a move he swore was for tax efficiency. What I saw wasn't tax planning. It was a financial assassination. Months ago, he hadn't restructured the company. He had systematically transferred ownership of all high-value liquid assets, real estate, major investment portfolios, into a newly formed shell corporation, registered entirely in his name, offshore. The timing was crucial. It happened just weeks after our last major, brutal argument, the one he had gaslighted me into believing was my fault. But the worst part, the irreversible blow, was the final document. An amendment to the operating agreement, signed, notarized, and hidden. It made me personally liable for almost $700,000 in operational debt tied to the sinking half of the business he was now abandoning. This wasn't just infidelity. This was calculated malice, designed to leave me financially crippled, perhaps even bankrupt, while he sailed off into the sunset with the entirety of our shared life's work. The discovery was like being thrown from a great height. The shock of the fall was replaced by the terrifying clarity of the ground rushing up to meet you. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. It was about turning the tables not just for my emotional dignity, but for my entire future. He had drawn the battle lines, and they were carved in legal ink. The time for sorrow was over. The time for devastating action had begun. This absolute proof, this cold, irrefutable evidence that he intended to destroy me completely, was the point of no return. I closed the hard drive, my hands steady now. The person who had entered that room was heartbroken. The person who left was a strategist prepared for war. I realized that the greatest power he thought he had, his money and his legal maneuvering, was now the very thing I could use against him. That night, I didn't sleep. I built a case file. I drafted the initial contact with the most ruthless attorney I could find. If this story of finding a cold, hard focus when betrayal hits the deepest part of your life resonates with you, please hit that like button. The next video is where the counter-strategy begins. The moment I used his own financial trap to turn the hunter into the hunted. Don't go anywhere. Hello, my resilient friends. If you're here, you've been following the story of how the very foundation of my life crumbled, only for me to realize I was standing on borrowed ground all along. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to a community dedicated to finding strength when the world turns its back. If stories of overcoming the impossible, of finding your own voice in the deafening silence of betrayal, resonate with you, please hit that subscribe button. We have so much more ground to cover. Tell me in the comments below, Where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories of transformation travel. Stay with me until the very last second, because the final moment of this story isn't about the fight. It's the quiet, profound perspective shift that saved my life. The night after I drafted those initial documents felt like the quiet before a geological event. I wasn't trembling with fear anymore. I was vibrating with focus. Fear is messy. Focus is surgical. The next morning, I met with Ms. Thorne, the attorney whose reputation preceded her like a dark, efficient storm cloud. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered structure. She looked at the meticulously organized file I handed her, the very file detailing the financial traps he had set, the legal maneuvers he thought were impenetrable, and simply nodded. "He taught you well," she observed, a chilling compliment that confirmed I was finally using his own power against him. The true consequence began not with a bang, but with a piece of certified mail. I wasn't present when the initial legal filing was served, and that was intentional. I refused to grant him the emotional spectacle he would crave. My absence was my first victory. I had moved beyond his orbit. The consequence I sought wasn't ruin, but the systematic dismantling of the narrative he had built around me, the dependent, fragile woman who needed his protection. When Ms. Thorne filed the cross-suit, detailing the precise ways he had leveraged our joint assets and the manipulation involved in the trust restructure, the silence from his camp was initially absolute. Then came the calls. Not from his legal team, but from him. He tried the familiar levers, the panic, the sadness, the manufactured indignation. "How could you do this to our family?" he demanded in a strained voice message, sounding less like a, heartbroken partner and more like a politician caught in a leak. I listened to that message once, cataloged it for Ms. Thorne, and then deleted it from my phone. My silence, the refusal to engage in the emotional theater, was the sharpest blade I possessed. I had starved the manipulator of his oxygen. The real justice wasn't the eventual settlement, though that was necessary and fair. The true justice was the moment the public facts forced his perfect facade to crack. The truth, in legal language, is often dry and clinical, but when it's presented to friends, business partners, and family, it becomes devastatingly human. I didn't have to explain or accuse. The documents did the talking. Seeing the slow realization dawn on the faces of people who had implicitly judged me for leaving, the dawning horror that they had been witnessing a masterclass in control, not a loving partnership, that was the emotional reckoning I needed. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my name from the narrative he had poisoned. The path forward was solitary, but infinitely cleaner. I walked away from the house, the lifestyle, and the carefully curated world that had become my cage. I learned that security is not measured by the height of your walls or the balance in your account, but by the unshakable certainty that you can rebuild everything from scratch. I had to forgive myself for trusting him, for seeing the potential instead of the reality. That self-forgiveness was harder than fighting him in court. I realized a hard, simple truth. Blood ties do not guarantee loyalty, and shared history does not ensure future kindness. Love, when weaponized, becomes the most effective form of imprisonment. My greatest failure, the complete surrender to the illusion of his care, became my greatest asset, because the moment I chose myself, the illusion evaporated. I didn't lose everything. I shed everything that wasn't real. If this story of finding a cold, hard focus when betrayal hits the deepest part of your life resonates with you, if you know that sharp, cold stab of realizing the person you trusted most was hollow, then you understand the power of rebuilding. Hit that like button right now and share your strongest takeaway in the comments. I read every single one. My journey of recovery wasn't linear. The real work began the day the case closed. The next video is about the emotional architecture I had to build to stop looking backward and start constructing a future I truly owned, a future free from his shadow. Don't go anywhere. Click the video on your screen now to see how I finally learned to trust myself again.